Hello everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. I am ChitChad and welcome back to another installment of the ABC Challenge. Today we're going to be drawing a character that represents the letter E. But before I reveal the character, we kind of need to give her a bit of a backstory first. So for those of you that haven't played Sonic Mania, there is a boss encounter with Dr. Robotnik in Flying Battery Zone in which he is piloting this weird robot mech. And he's actually sitting upside down in the mech. And it's really interesting just the way you see him through this window. It frames him in a very interesting way. So much so, in fact, an artist by the name of BlackBookAlpha actually took that sprite and turned it into a completely new character. Since posting the original character concept, this character took the Sonic fan community and part of the internet by storm. She had everything from fan art to music created for her boss theme to animations, a little bit of everything, and it was really crazy how fast it took off. But ever since I saw the original character design, I myself wanted to draw this character. She has this very spunky yet maniacal look about her, and I just thought it'd be really fun to draw her. And I thought the E for the ABC Challenge would be perfect because her name is Eggette. Well, it's also Omelette. They haven't quite decided what name she goes by. So with the introduction out of the way, let's spin dash to the time lapse. Alright, so moving on to the speed paint portion of this video, I am really excited to be drawing this character, and I'm actually going to be trying out a couple of new techniques that I've really wanted to try. I just haven't had a good opportunity to utilize some of these visual aesthetics and some of these styles, but recently I was looking at some of the old Pokemon artwork, which if you've never seen like the original like Pokemon artwork, they had this very unique paint-like quality to them, and I've really wanted to try and emulate that style for a long time now. And I felt like this would be a great piece to do that with. So we're going to be trying out some new painting techniques that I haven't done before, and I'm really excited with how they turn out. You'll just have to see when we get to that point of the video. You'll also notice that I sped up this video a considerable amount because originally I was just going to draw Eggette / Omelette. But then I decided that when I was doing this very perspective style pose that it would be really interesting to have a bunch of badniks around her. Originally I was going to have her just looking like she was scheming, but then I'm like, ooh, if I added badniks, then I can have her kind of like, you know, like pointing them to like go attack, you know, whether it's, you know, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, or just random inhabitants of Mobius, you know. So as soon as that popped in my head, I'm like, oh, we got to draw some badniks. So the badniks added a considerable amount of time to this piece, but overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out, and once again, I do have to apologize because of the length that it took for this piece. This video did come out a little later than anticipated. I end up having simplistic ideas, and then I just keep adding more and more to it, so it's one of those things where I'd rather come up with a really cool piece that I really like and then have it be just a little bit behind than try and rush something just to get it out on time. So I know there's got to be a happy medium to that, but I sway more to I'd rather it look good and be a little bit late than rush it and not be happy with the final piece. So, and that also helps me because I talked in the previous video, I think with the Deku drawing, is that I tend to go back and change things after I've already done them, and part of me does that because I did rush it and I wanted to go back and fix things. But with this, honestly, when I look at the final piece, I'm like, that's good. I'm happy with that. So I think for me, it's just spend my time, make it look good, and not worry so much about the deadline, especially on, you know, something like YouTube. It's not like YouTube is my job or anything. This is just for fun, so I don't want to stress over having fun, if that makes sense. So yeah, I started drawing the badniks, and I wanted to do the classic ones. I didn't want to do any of like the egg robos or anything like that. I wanted to go super classic, so we pick a couple from Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and I can't remember if, well, some of them I think carried over to Sonic 3, but I think I picked mainly ones from Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. And you'll probably recognize them. They're very classic. And I changed the positions of how I had them laid out just because I really wanted the piece to flow. And normally I do portrait pieces, especially for art, but this time around, because I wanted to add badniks, I switched it from originally what was going to be a portrait piece to a landscape piece, and that allowed me for more room to add a lot of these badniks. And like I said before in the intro of this video, like this character design is just a lot of fun. It's like it's like if you took almost like Dexter from Dexter's Lab, Robotnik, and then if you also took a bit of Pidge from Voltron and kind of smashed them into one character, I feel like that's what Eggette is, because she's got a very like her overall look kind of looks like Pidge, but she's got the scientist, you know, kind of like look of Dexter and Robotnik kind of put together, and it's a fun design, and genuinely I would love for this character to be a real thing. I mean, we already have Sonic Mania, which was a fan created game for the most part. I mean, it's not in the fact that they were, you know, just fans, they were actually hired by Sega, so it's not like it was just a straight up fan game, but all of them made fan games previously to making Sonic Mania. It's just Sega allowed them and gave them the finances and the resources to actually make a full-scale actual Sonic game, which is so stinking cool. So if we can get that, then if this character gained enough traction, I think it would be really interesting to have this character or a character like her in future Sonic games. I know that's not probable to happen just because it is a fan character, but I really like the idea of Robotnik having this other person to kind of, you know, have conversations with that isn't just a robot. I mean, I do not like the sphere and the square. The sphere and the cube bots, I can't remember, that's probably their names, but I don't remember what their names are. But like, they're robots, and sure, they've got personalities, but with this character, she looks like she could almost be sweet, and then you find out that she's just as maniacal and evil as Robotnik, maybe even more evil. Like, what a twist that would be, you know? It'd be kind of like if Snively from the Sonic, the Saturday morning Sonic cartoons turned out to be like more evil than Robotnik himself, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I just think it'd be really interesting because Robotnik doesn't have a lot to play off of. He's just himself, and most of the characters that he has conversations with end up betraying him. Metal Sonic ends up betraying him. Shadow kind of ends up betraying him. Let's see, Chaos ends up betraying him, but he didn't really have conversations with Chaos, more like he ordered him to do stuff. Emerald, which I think was, what was that, Sonic Battle, I think that game was. So it's just like any character that Robotnik even remotely has conversations with ends up betraying him, or they're just not interesting characters in of themselves. So this would just be fun. I just think this concept would be so much fun in the actual setting and would give Robotnik a reason to talk other than just monologuing all the time, because monologues are well and good. I mean, Spider-Man and Deadpool make total habits of doing that in the comic book universe, but as far as like characters actually having conversations, it's so much better to have someone for them to play off of. I mean, that's why sidekicks were kind of a thing. Like, not only to kind of like lighten up the villain, which is kind of like how Harley Quinn was made, but also to allow the characters to have someone to play off of, to have a conversation with. I mean, it makes it so much more interesting. And they even play it up like, sticking to the comic book theme, even think about, like with Iron Man, or even most recently the Spider-Man movie, where he has an AI that talks to him. Like, that's to kind of alleviate the whole monologuing thing and actually give him someone to have a conversation with and propel the story forward. Just overall, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this. Overall, I just think it would be fun. It doesn't have to be this character, just maybe add a character in the future that Robotnik could talk to, and not himself, not like the classic version of Robotnik. They're probably going to do that again for Sonic Forces. But let's get a new character in there for Robotnik to have a conversation too that's not going to betray him, you know, in the same game they're introduced in. But now we're moving on, like always, to Adobe Animate / Adobe Flash, which recently got an update, which I am super happy for. Because it added a lot of things that, like, they're small things, but they're really helpful. Like, there's actual like timeline markers now, so you know not only the frame but the seconds, which is super stinking helpful, because you can only really read the seconds before when you were on the frame of which the seconds were. So like, if I move to frame whatever, and if that happened to be 1 second long, then that's the only way I would be able to find out exactly how long it is. So now we actually have time markers. Super helpful. Love it. I need to explore further. I need to get back into animating more things, especially past just like the Planet Coaster stuff that I've been animating. I'm still working on my animated series. It just kind of keeps getting pushed back every time I have to come out with a video for both the channels. So I'm still trying to figure out how to make that all work, but I definitely want to jump back into animation, especially now that Adobe Animate's actually getting the proper support that it needs. But Adobe Character Animator, I could go on and on about that platform, man. That thing is so cool, and that's the only way I was able to make that Skeletor Skeletor animation that I did a while back, which was a lot of fun. I just want to get back and do more animation, especially when I'm drawing really cartoony characters like this. It just gets me really excited to like take these character concepts and like take them from a still to an animation. It's that thing that I kind of talked about either in a previous video, I think maybe a Planet Coaster video, where I was saying it's so much more rewarding when you see a piece that you've made in a different setting than when it originated in. So for instance, this piece starts in, you know, it's in Photoshop, it's in Adobe Animate / Flash, you know, and then it's back into Photoshop. When you see something printed that's a piece, it's so rewarding to see it in like a different platform, something that you can hold, something you can look at in the physical world, much like it's still a virtual world, but when you look at a piece like that a piece that I made and I incorporated it into Planet Coaster, whether it was like an image or if it was a video, it's transcended its original format into something new, and it's just really exciting to see that, and it kind of gives a whole new layer, a whole new depth to whatever it is that you created. I probably would feel very much the same way if I were to create something in, say, VR. You know, you're kind of transcending the physical space and moving from a flat two-dimensional world into a three-dimensional world, whether it's virtually or in actuality. So that stuff really excites me, and I hope one day that I can actually play around with VR. I have only been able to mess with VR once in my life so far, and that was at Adobe Max, which was a lot of fun. It was like a virtual reality kind of like challenge room, and it was very interesting, and it could kind of catch you off guard. I know it caught my friend Caitlin off guard. There was a couple times where it required you to move over like these large paths or like these giant pitfalls, and for a second it really psychs you out. You look down, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. But then there was also segments where you were allowed to grab these different paintbrush and paint in the virtual space, and that was a lot of fun. And I've seen artists on YouTube paint in VR. I'm like, I want to do that. That looks like so much fun. Especially like, I'm thinking even in terms of animation, like you could kind of do crude kind of animations that way, where you kind of set up things in virtual depth and kind of move the camera around to give it almost like a motion comic kind of look to it, which would be a lot of fun to do. So now that we've finished things off inside of Adobe Animate, we're moving on back into Adobe Photoshop. What you see me doing right now is applying a white fill to the back of the characters. That way, when I go to fill the actual look at all layers, which when you use the fill bucket and tell it to look at all layers, it's going to look at the separations between the line work and the actual white fill. So then that way I don't have to keep using the magic wand tool, going in and making my selections and then expanding the selections out by 1 or 2 pixels just to make sure that they actually go behind the line work. I can just fill it automatically when I push it to the fill about 100% or so. And then it'll allow me to just fill things in really quickly, which is super nice. And you can see I'm referencing the original image that BlackBookAlpha created to kind of get the color scheme of the character right. And then I import another image of some badniks. 3D renders the badniks, but it still gives me the color and the temperature of the colors that I need to work with. So it still does its job. And we're getting closer and closer to when I start applying the new painting style that I was really excited for. And you'll see it's completely different from anything that I've done previous to this video. And I just got really excited for it. And I'm going to continue to utilize this new kind of painting style. Because for me personally, I feel like my drawings in general have like a style that's me. But I've never had a style that really speaks in terms of how I paint things. I think a lot of people look at my stuff and they see that it's very bright and vibrant and colorful and just like cheery. Well, even I've done some like pieces like with the Xenomorph from Alien, and I used a lot of colors. I used greens and blues and purples to really bring out this character that would be very dark otherwise. I utilize this color to kind of make it pop, and I think in that way I have a visual distinct style. But in terms of actual strokes of what we'll call a digital brush, I don't think I really had anything that particularly stood out. So I've been wanting to try this technique for a while. Even though it's based off of something else, it's kind of like a lot of artists will just kind of take things that they've seen and kind of make it their own or do something a little bit different with it. So in terms of the original Pokemon drawings that I saw, I've utilized more layers to the actual shading process than what they did. It was very just, here's darks and here's lights, and there wasn't a lot in between, whereas I've gone in through multiple passes and utilizing Photoshop, doing overlays instead of just straight normal layers, utilizing overlays to kind of saturate up the color behind it to make it pop even more. And I did a bit of push and pull where I pushed the shading a bit further back, and then I pulled it back just because I was trying to find the right blend. I didn't want to overshade, but I didn't want to undershade at the same time. So there's a couple times where I went in with the eraser and just kind of softened up the transition between what was painted and what is still just the original flat color. And in doing that, you still have the texture of the brush, the simulated virtual brush, but you have a bit more of a softer approach, and it kind of blends them all together. So you still have the texture, but it just eases in just a little bit. But if you overdo it, then of course you're going to lose the texture. So I was trying to be real careful not to overdo it. But as I was drawing these badniks, I was happy with how everything was turning out, but I felt like Eggette wasn't standing out as much as she should be, seeing as she is the main point of the piece, and the badniks are kind of just a secondary element. So what I ended up doing was pushing them farther back into the background by doing an overlay with just a little bit of white on them. And I'm really happy with like the perspective of everything. I could have done a bit better, especially on this bee bomber that I'm painting up right now. Perspective wise, he's not really accurate, and I would say that overall probably there's a lot of inconsistencies, but I'm still happy with it. It's a cartoony style, and I think I can kind of get away with saying that it's cartoony, and my mistakes are still mistakes, and I can get better, but I'm still happy with the overall execution of this piece, and it's still very fun. And every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh, it's cool, because it's not that I'm like, oh, it's my piece. It's that I tried something new and I'm actually really happy with it. Whereas there's been so many times I've tried new techniques that I haven't been happy with. A good example would be if you've looked at my channel, or if you've been on this channel for any length of time, you've noticed that I've changed my intros and outros pretty frequently. And that's because I've learned new techniques and I want to try and apply them. But instead of working on a piece that might not be for anything, I decided to try and like create new intros and outros to utilize it in a space that would actually need to have, you know, graphical elements or new elements or something that would have to be changed out, because graphic design and animation and motion graphics, like this industry changes and evolves so gosh darn fast that if you aren't constantly learning new skills and applying them, then you're just going to be left behind in the dust. So I think that for me, that's a good way to kind of keep my skills fresh and to still utilize said skills for something that's meaningful to me. So for me, it's this channel, and it's growing this channel and evolving this channel and keeping it up with where I'm at in my skill set currently. Because even if you look at this piece compared to the first piece that I did when I brought the channel back after the 2-month hiatus, I would say that my skill set's improved. I mean, not vastly improved, but definitely has improved since I've actually started drawing more consistently and posting these videos and pushing myself, you know, to spend multiple hours on creating these pieces. For example, this piece I believe took about 4.5 hours to complete, which is still a bit faster than what I probably would have been able to do if I started this right out the gates 2 months ago. But still, I can get faster and I can get better, and that's what I'm excited about. And I'm really excited for how this piece looks. And we have reached the end, so let's go ahead and move on to the final look of the E for Eggette piece. And that is the final piece for the ABC challenge. I know I always say this, but I honestly had a lot of fun drawing this character. It was a bit more complicated than I originally thought, just because I decided to go with a completely different style for painting, and I actually really like how it turned out. And so I'm probably going to utilize this for future art pieces. And as always, I'm curious, who would you have picked for the letter E? And while you're writing that response down in the comments below, feel free to leave a suggestion for the letter F for the next ABC challenge video. Thank you so much for watching. And a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. I could not do this without you. If you want to help out the channel, consider checking out the Patreon. And if you like this content and you want to see more, check out the video to the top right. And hey, I'm actually playing Sonic Mania on my gaming channel, so if you want to see that, check the video at the bottom right. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will chat with you later.